Awesome. All right. So today we have on Premia, obviously, and Arbitrary Execution, who is our security partner. We've been working with them since roughly November. They actually, the origin story of us is that for the Knox Vault audit, they were actually our Sherlock guardians. And since then, we've really liked working with them, and so we've kind of formalized that partnership, and now we work on a regular basis. I don't know what's going on with the Courtney or Lumio. I would say maybe try closing your Twitter app and then reopening. That's what I saw online. Nonetheless, so today we're going to be discussing a few things. To give people a little bit more background, so for V3, we are kind of pioneering this trilateral security audit. It's a three-pronged approach. We have a code review. We have a economic audit, because obviously between the margin and the new base layer, there's a lot of economics and accounting that goes into place. And so we'll be doing an economic audit with small quants that began last week. And then we have a behavioral audit, which will be closer to the end of April, in which we will spin up everything on a test net. It's going to be Gorley, in which that users can do a trading competition. The winner will get the top three will get some prizes, but then now allow us to stress test the system. The behavioral audit that we did for V2 was very impactful. We found out a few things that we could optimize for, and we believe the same thing will happen for V3. But today we'll be talking about our partnership with Arbitrary Execution and the code audit. And John, if you kind of take us through how we're kind of going through this new process, bringing you guys forward into the actual dev cycle in comparison to traditional transaction audits, and just where you kind of see the partnership going from here.
Yeah, sure thing. So real quick, for folks not familiar with us too, I'll give you just some quick background on what arbitrary execution is all about. But we come from the traditional security research world. And so we were, in our past lives, reverse engineering, finding vulnerabilities in different computer systems, and then understanding, how those bugs can be turned into exploits and understanding their impact. And about 2 years ago, we started up AE to bring that expertise into the Web3 space. So back at ETH Denver, we unveiled something called the Web3 SDLC. And the whole idea of that is shifting the focus from point in time, one gigantic comprehensive audit, and spreading security out across the entire development lifecycle. So whether we're talking about the system design phase, just where you're coming up with ideas, to the actual writing of code, to the audit portion, and then to everything kind of like deployment and onward, we want to get teams thinking about security at every step. And that's why we're so excited to be working with Premia, because we get to do that. And so how it works now is we meet with the dev team twice a week, kind of at the start of the week, to talk about sort of your priorities for what you're trying to do. We'll work throughout the week and then kind of sync up at the end, so we can kind of quickly shift the focus to whatever you guys need. What it's been mostly, since your head's down doing development, right, has been code reviews. So every time Lumio and Courtney and the rest of the team are pushing out changes, one of our researchers is kind of taking a look at each pull request as it goes through. And that's cool because that can catch things earlier. And so if there's sort of code smells or kind of like bigger design problems, these are the kind of things that we want to catch early in that process rather than at the end when you guys go ahead and do like a comprehensive audit of the whole code base. So it's good stuff.
Nice. So maybe we can have, so I would really like Courtney and Lumio to come up and speak. Since you're co-host, I'm actually going to try something real quick. Be right back. Okay, I'm back. Hopefully this will fix it. Can you invite them on the since you're the co-host from the Arbitrary Execution account? Can you bring them up to speak, Courtney and Lemio? Am I talking to myself?
So I'm not seeing them in here. Let me try.
Courtney has a Tornado Cash profile picture, and Lumio has like looks like a Knight of Royalty.
Okay, I got him. So it says they're already invited to speak.
Yeah, weird. Let's do this. All right, Lemia, you should have an invite to be co-host. And then I asked, it says you're now co-host. Nice. We can hear Lemia now. Woo. All right, Lemio, take us through how we've been integrating with arbitrary execution and some of the benefits that you see by having this ongoing audit relationship as opposed to transactional audits. Let me hear your voice isn't coming through. Can we have like max? I don't know. I hate Twitter Spaces so much.
It shows me as just a listener.
This shows you as a speaker. Yeah, Lemio is no longer a co-host, and I approved Courtney, but I don't know what's going on. Anyways, yeah. So to give you guys some more clarity, so what's happening on a regular basis is we partner for 10 hours a week. We have a few calls. We go over all the code reviews, and then our merge cycle of all those commits actually is owned by Arbitrary Execution, right? So as we are continuing to implement code and commit code, we pass it on to Arbitrary Execution. They do a review, and then they merge that to the main branch. So not only are we doing peer reviews internally, but then we have an external review before we merge any code into the main code base. If you're not familiar with traditional audits typically wait until the end of the code development cycle. Then you kind of have a big bang audit where you bring in anywhere from 1 to 3 external auditors to look at the code base. However, there are some downsides to that. Let me bring and so the downsides on a transactional audit is usually you don't have a lot of clarity or context into what the code you're reviewing is, right? It's usually like, especially in the bull market, in which that auditors are so backed up, you only have like a 2-week window to get everything done. So there's not even a lot of time to actually showcase what your product does, kind of discuss with them all the intricacies of what you're trying to build. And it's kind of a rush process. What happens is a lot of transactional audits, they'll run some automated tooling to kind of check for, some base level known issues. They'll look for, the known like reentry exploit vectors. However, at the end, you get a piece of paper that says that they looked at your code. And then what you find in the dev community a lot is that between your post-audit review and before you move to production, you actually will sometimes find some medium to high-level bugs that the auditors didn't find. And so there's a major drawback there. It's a rushed process. A lot of the times auditors don't even know like the products that you're trying to develop, and specifically for our case, in which that the economics, the accounting, the derivatives in general are complex, and then trying to bring them on chain with the constraints of an EVM makes it even more complex, right? And so we're constantly doing things to optimize, reduce gas costs, but then also make sure that we're thinking about security first. And so in that confined time frame, it makes things like super difficult. And so we've kind of changed. I don't know if this is true or not, John, but we're definitely one of the first to kind of go through your SDLC process. Maybe tell us a little bit about the SDLC process that you announced at ETH Denver, and then what it entails, and then we can kind of discuss how Premia is following that guideline.
Yeah, sure. So the SDLC, right? So that stands for the Secure Development Lifecycle, right? And so we break that up into 4 different phases, from idea to kind of post-launch for a product or protocol, right? And so it's the 4 Ds. So it's design, develop, deploy, and defend. And for each of those stages, we set out some criteria for different things that you should be thinking about, and then set some standards for how mature you are for that thing. So if you look at like the design phase, for example, we'll consider things like how well documented is your design? Are you using known design patterns, and is your architecture sensible? And we also have some sections where we'll look at risk analysis and management from both like a technical perspective and a business perspective. In the develop phase, that's actually where you're hands down writing code. And so it's like, what is your development process? What's your code review process? What are you doing as far as code analysis, testing, logging? How do you protect your development secrets? All that sort of stuff. Then there's the deploy phase, right? And so that's looking at, is your deployment automated? What are you doing in terms of key management? Are you testing your deployments? Are you doing a testnet deployment? And then the final phase, right, is the defend. And so that's where we talk about real-time monitoring, incident responses, bug bounty programs, insurance, and sort of everything that happens after you've already deployed. And if we bundle all of those things together, we have what we call the Web3 security maturity model. And that's a way for you and your teams to self-eval, how mature are you in all of these different spaces. And so, right now we can look at the partnership with Premia as a lot of focus on that develop phase, right? And so we're kind of like you said, in your code review process, we're looking at best practices. We're looking at the specific changes that you guys are making, and kind of getting that in as you're building your V3. But I can see these retainer style things, as you guys come closer to launch, right? We'll probably shift to that deploy phase, right? And we can take that time to look at, hey, how is your automation for this stuff? How is your key management? And then we've talked a couple times, right, about doing both monitoring of kind of regular protocol health stuff, as well as like anomalous behavior and potential exploits and things like that. So there's lots of places for us to help when it comes to looking at kind of this SDLC in a retainer context. And I think that's fits a little bit better than when you look at the kind of big bang security audit. Those are still super important, and this certainly isn't like a replacement for those big transactional style audits. But I think combining the two of these really sets you up to kind of cover all your bases. And really that continuous SDLC kind of lets you catch the low-hanging fruit during the dev cycle. And so when it does come time for that big audit, auditors aren't wasting their time basically linting your code, right? Catching all the like low-hanging fruit things that can be caught from good code review, static analysis, and really lets them spend time focusing on those like deep protocol level logic bugs. because that's really what you want to be optimizing for when you get to that big audit phase, is like let them look for the complicated stuff. Don't bog them down with the small things.
Awesome. Still trying to work on this fucking shit. This anyways, I don't think we're going to be able to get Lumio or Courtney on. Whenever they join us as co-hosts, they lose sound, so they have to stay as listeners.
These Twitter spaces, man.
Dude, they're always buggy. The last one we had, we listened to music for the first like 10 minutes. We couldn't figure out how to turn it off. Anyways, awesome. And I also want to briefly discuss, John, kind of take us through the organization's background, and then that's going to kind of also lead me into the next point of how we're not only looking at this from like a Solidity front, but with some of the new features that V3 will offer, we're also looking at different ways that we can get our software looked at outside of just straight Solidity smart contracts. I'll get into that after you kind of give the background.
Yeah, sounds good. So, our background is in traditional software systems, and so in like our past lives, we were finding vulnerabilities in things like web browsers, mobile devices, operating systems, and so a lot of the auditors and founders and researchers at AE, there's about 14 of us on like the engineering side. We have spent years finding bugs in those systems. And so there's a lot of overlap in sort of that process for enumerating all the areas where a user can like poke at a system, right? And then understanding how to trace that input through a system to find bugs and understand their impact. So what's cool about Arbitrary Execution now is not only can we do the standard Solidity smart contract audits, but if there are off-chain components or just other systems that you want us to poke holes in, because of our background, we're pretty well equipped to do that. And so we've done some engagements with other customers looking at either their off-chain components, or some of the really fun stuff is when you get a mix of both, right? So a little bit of Solidity and who knows, something else. But either way, we've got a team of highly motivated, sharp people that are pretty darn good at finding bugs and then understanding their impact.
Awesome. And so what that leads into is obviously the core of V3 will be smart contract based, with specifics being that we'll be consolidating a lot of the volume to make sure that liquidity is not fragmented into Arbitrum, but then also hosting our limit order book on Arbitrum Nova. That introduces some new complexities that is new to the Premia. Well, not necessarily new to the Premia development team, but new to the Premia product platform. So with that, we'll be to take a step back. The way that it will work for our limit order book is that if you are a low flow trader, you can come to our platform and you can put in, let's say, a limit order saying that you want to buy a Arbitrum call at a certain price point, at a certain strike, and then how much you're willing to pay for that. And then that will live in the order book so that if anyone wants to sell it to you, they can. You'll sign a message that will then route through a relayer that will house. And so we'll pay for the gas for you. And that will then live on chain as an event emitted within Arbitrum Nova. And then we'll take all of those different events, all the different orders, we'll then index them and then bring them to the front end of the UI. And so as part of some of the relayer components of taking that signed message and then emitting it, sending it to chain, and then indexing all of those different orders, there's going to be some Web 2 elements there. We do plan on open sourcing a lot of those Web 2 elements so anyone can actually run an indexer or relayer. We're going to recommend, or not recommend, but we'll definitely allow all the tools. So if you want to run, your own node per se in our infrastructure, you can do that. Spin up spin up a site. So we'll be open sourcing a lot of the front end components. The SDK obviously will be open sourced. And then the relayer and indexing will also be open source. And because we do have referrals built into the core part of the protocol, that if you wanted to push volume to the base layer, or you wanted to push volume to the order book, then you will be, compensated for that volume that you push, right? So we're going to be decentralizing a lot of that, so that we're not the, sole point of failure. And with that comes Redis servers, that comes some of the core like SDK libraries that will be available. And with Arbitrary Execution's background in that, they'll also be looking at that from a traditional software pen testing perspective as well, to make sure that that's as robust as it can be. Awesome. So that is the majority of what I had to cover in terms of how we're thinking about security from the engineering side. Is there anyone that wants to come up and ask any questions on how we're approaching this differently than last time, or what this means for users? All right, I don't see anyone's hand being raised, but given the technical difficulties we've seen, who knows? Maybe you did raise a hand. Horny, do you have a question? You always have a question. Nope. All right. Well, that concludes our AMA. Unless there's anything else you John, you want to speak about, or give any closing thoughts? If not, we can wrap it up.
No, not too much. I think we're just we're just excited that more people are kind of getting the idea that, hey, those big audits, right, they're important, but it's just one component of what you need to be thinking about in terms of security. And I think we're just especially stoked that Premia gets it, and you guys have been willing to bring us in to kind of help out at each phase throughout the life cycle.
Yeah, it's been a great working with you guys thus far.
Likewise.
Awesome. All right. Since no questions came up, thanks everyone for joining. We'll make sure to put this on the YouTube later today, and speak to you guys tomorrow with our AMA with Marty. Awesome. Adios.
Yep.
Sweet.
Thanks for joining, John, everyone. Have a great week.
Good to hear from you guys. Take it easy.